Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first Summit Experience webinar of 2024. We'll get started with our meeting here in just a moment. In the meantime, please take a second to scan the QR code on your screen and enter our drawing for some great Summit swag that we will have two drawings throughout the meeting. And so as long as you hit your name and give us a way to follow up if you win, you will be eligible for some great Summit swag, including Summit cap, a Summit t-shirt, Summit towel. So we'll just Summit you out. So go ahead and scan that QR code to enter that drawing before we get started. And like I said, we'll get started at 7:03 by my clock. So I already have, looks like about 12, 14 responses. So like I said, scan that QR code, enter our drawing, and we will get started in about 2.5 minutes. All right, good evening, everyone. If you're just joining us, please scan the QR code on your screen to enter a drawing for some Summit giveaway items that will be for which we'll be drawing this evening during our call. We'll get started now in about 2 minutes, so about 2 minutes, and we will get started. So again, go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen and enter to win some great Summit swag. We'll have two drawings during our meeting this evening, so make sure you don't miss out. All right, and again, we have about 90 seconds before we'll get started, and make sure you enter our drawing. We've got more than 50 individuals entered for our drawing now. So again, if you're just joining us, thank you so much for logging in this evening. We'll get started in about 75 seconds now. And in the meantime, please make sure to scan the QR code on your screen and enter our drawing for some great Summit swag. All right. So we'll get started in about 1 minute. Make sure you scan that QR code. It will disappear after I click off of this slide. So make sure that you scan it and get entered now. This will be the only opportunity, and we'll get started here in about 45 seconds now. All right. So if you're just joining us, please scan the QR code on your screen quickly. We've got about 20 seconds before we will get started. Looks like we have some great rate of entry. We've got about 87 people who have entered in for our drawing this evening. Again, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Scan that QR code quickly. It will disappear very soon. Welcome to our Summit Experience webinar. Make sure you scan that QR code, and I'll give you about 10 more seconds, and then we are going to go ahead and get started. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Johnny Tracy. I am the on-site programs and outreach manager here at the Summit Bechtel Reserve in beautiful Glen Jean, West Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our first webinar. And thank you so much for ensuring that your scouts get to visit us here at the Summit. We are super excited to meet you, meet your scouts, and provide them a summer experience that they will never forget. So this evening, we'll be talking about some different aspects of the Summit experience, which is our premier on-site high adventure program here at the Summit. Really one of the coolest things that we offer, and in my opinion, one of the most interesting high adventure experiences in the BSA, because there's such a wide variety of things for your scouts and leaders to do. So I'm going to click off of this screen now. So again, welcome to our first Summit Experience webinar. This meeting is being recorded, as I've indicated in my communications in advance of the meeting. So that recording, along with a variety of supporting materials, will be emailed out to our primary email list following this meeting. Similarly to the meeting invitation, please share the follow-up email with any stakeholders in your group who might benefit from receiving the information. With that, quick note on questions and answers. So this evening, I am the Summit staff member who is conducting the webinar and answering any questions. So please feel free to put questions in the chat throughout the meeting. I do have a second monitor, and so I will be looking at the chat throughout the meeting. That said, there may be, if I don't get to your question during the course of the meeting, I will review the chat at the end of the meeting to make sure that I've answered any questions. At the very end, I'll also adjust the permissions so that you can ask a question over orally if that works better for you. So with that, some quick notes about taking notes. So no need to feverishly write down every single thing that I say or that you see. The slides that I'm using for this meeting, along with supporting documentation, supporting documents and other materials from the meeting, will be emailed the goal is within 24 hours. That said, I'm not a perfect person, so sometimes I need a little grace there. But the intention is to send all of those materials and supporting documents within 24 hours of this meeting ending. And so you should have that tomorrow night. So if you'd like to take notes, please do, but you don't have to. So as we get started, quick introductions. I introduce myself. I am Johnny Tracy. My email and phone number are listed here. The phone number listed here is my cell, so you're welcome to call or text that number whenever it's convenient for you, and I will get back to you just as soon as I can. You can email me at the email listed here or at johnny.tracy@scouting.org. Both emails work for me. Separately, we have a fantastic registration department here at the Summit. That department is headed by Christy Richardson, who is a longtime Summit employee, a veteran of many jamborees and summers here. You can reach her and her team at summit.program@scouting.org or at the number listed on the screen. Again, this information will be shared with you afterwards, so no need to feverishly take notes. A quick note here, when you're reaching out to ask for assistance, it is helpful for us if you have your expedition number, which the format of which is here. So it'll be SE, the date of your arrival, and then a letter to indicate the order in which you registered. That helps us identify your experience and pull out your registration information a little bit quicker. That said, if you don't have that information, we can usually hunt that information down. It just might take an extra minute. So it's very helpful if you include that expedition number in any communication. So we will begin this evening by discussing some of the basics. So a couple of notes on what the Summit experience entails, what it is kind of philosophically, and what we hope your scouts and leaders get out of the experience. So to start off, we'll talk about the Paul R. Christed National High Adventure Base, which is the home here at the Summit of the Summit experience. So the Paul R. Christed National High Adventure Base is the home to 6 total high adventure experiences, including the Summit experience. The Summit experience is our most popular one by volume and by absolute numbers. So we are super happy to welcome you here for that the fantastic opportunities that this program presents. So the goal of the Paul R. Christen National High Adventure Base is to use adventure sports, and in the case of the Summit Experience program, to use the high adventure venues on the site here at the Summit to build competence, confidence, connections, caring, and character. We are, of course, working to deliver the promises of scouting to not only your leaders, but not only to your scouts, but to your leaders and to your other stakeholders. So even those who aren't coming with you should see the benefit and should see the changes in your scouts when they return from the Summit experience. So that's our goal. And we hope that you are as excited as we are to deliver that programming. So looking more specifically at the Summit experience, and don't worry, we'll get a little more granular than this as we go on. The Summit experience, as I mentioned before, is a fantastic opportunity because the scouts and leaders who are participating get a little bit of everything. So participants spend a half day in all of the high adventure program venues that we have here on the Summit site. In addition, they go on a half-day whitewater trip as part of that program. Groups camp on site at the Summit. The Summit experience is based in Bravo. We'll have some information later about accessing maps or viewing maps of the site. If you are familiar with the Summit, Bravo is the base camp directly across from Action Point, and the Fork in the Road Diner is the dining hall that serves participants in the Bravo and Alpha sections of camp. And so we'll talk a little bit more about meals and field food service later. But as a note for anyone who's familiar with the site, I really like the Summit experience because you're not fully committed to one type of programming for the duration of your stay. We do our best to provide a really great variety, a meaningful variety. And, our goal is that if climbing or aerial sports isn't really one scout or venturer's thing, then hopefully some of the other program opportunities like skateboarding and BMX or target sports will be their thing. So we are excited to present opportunities for everybody. And in contrast to actually all of the other high adventure programs of the BSA, participation is open to individuals age 13 and older in the Summit experience. So it's a great first or a great finale high adventure experience. So one quick note here, because I mentioned the minimum age for participation in the Summit experience, there are no additional age restrictions on any of the activities that are part of the Summit experience. So everything that your 13-year-old participant can do, all of your participants can do. So there are no restrictions for any parts of the Summit Experience program based on age. Okay. A quick note here, there is information available online at summitbsa.org. If you scan the QR code here, you can navigate to that page and click on the High Adventure Experience and learn more about the Summit Experience or share more information that's available online with your participants. Additionally, we highly encourage you to share the Leader's Guide with all of your stakeholders, parents, guardians, scouts, other leaders, so that they have a good idea of what's offered, what's expected, and what to expect. If you scan the QR code here, you can access the summitbsa.org/guides page, from which you can download the Leader's Guide for this year. Okay. So before I get into the administration and paperwork, it looks like all of the questions I've gotten so far are pretty basic and I can answer pretty quickly. So I'll stop with Seth's question, but I will answer the other one. So someone asked, can the crew modify the Summit experience schedule? Generally, the answer to that question is no. We'll see the schedule as it's laid out here in just a moment. If you have any specific questions, then feel free to reach out and I'll be more than happy to help. The next question asks, can we modify the size of our crew Yes, you can. You can adjust the number of participants up or down in the event management system now. If you have any difficulty with that, reach out to me or the registration team, and we'll be happy to help. The next question is, if we have food allergies that have changed, who do we contact about updating that? So we'll talk a little bit about that later. There are a couple of other considerations to be made there, so we'll make sure that you have all the information you need, but we are very responsive and accommodating to food allergies. We have a question, do all members, crew members need to pass the swim test? It's encouraged, but there are some alternative activities that we can do if anyone needs that accommodation. The next question is, will the scouts complete any specific merit badge requirements? And if so, do you provide a record of the completed requirements? They certainly will complete some requirements. However, we don't provide any documentation of those completions. So it is up to the unit and the leaders to track that. I can talk a little bit more about that at the end too. Let's see, next we have, are there size, such as height and weight restrictions for any events? The answer to that is yes. The primary one, or I would say the umbrella consideration there, is that participants are strongly encouraged to meet the BSA height weight restrictions. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The primary event that has weight restrictions is our zip lines, so our aerial sports programs, for which for Alexander Eagle Flight, formerly known as the Big Zip, participants have to weigh a minimum of 80 pounds and can weigh a maximum of 250 pounds. And I'll make sure to document that too, so no worries about writing that down. Otherwise, the maximum weight for any zip line here at the summit is 250 pounds. And then the final one, or next, how many crew members tent together? Typically two. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but typically two crew members camp together. And then finally, just for that, at Jamboree, you had to be 14 for pistol. Is that different for Summit Experience? You only have to be 13. So Summit Experience participants don't shoot pistol. So everything that they, so again, there's no age restriction for the Summit Experience groups. Okay, so next section is administration and paperwork. So this part will be particularly beneficial to the person, or hopefully be particularly beneficial to the person who is organizing your payments and paperwork. So the fee schedule is reflected here. The Summit Experience fee is $1,100 per participant. You have paid at your initial registration $250. The typical payment schedule is 10% of the fees are due by March 1st or within 30 days of your reservation being placed. And your second payment is due typically by November 1st or within 30 days of placing a reservation. So there may be several cases in which you placed a reservation outside of this timeline, and if so, that's totally fine. The goal is that all crews are paid 90 days before they arrive at the summit. If you're after that, that's fine. You also may have discussed specific payment considerations with the registration team or with me. If that's the case, that's totally fine. And so if you have specific questions, please reach out to the summit.program@scouting.org, email or get in touch with me, and we'll be happy to clear up any questions there. So this slide offers a list of the forms that each individual will need at check-in. So we'll go over this form quickly, and then if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those during a later part of the meeting. So of course, it is a scouting event and it is a long-term camp. And so because of that, all participants must have a copy of the BSA Annual Health and Medical Record, parts A, B, and C, completed within the last 12 months. So a lot of times people ask, well, when does it expire? So I will give you the example that is on the BSA website, which is this. If your last medical exam was performed on July 1st, 2023, that medical form is good through July, so until July 31st, 2024. So it's good for 12 months, and then but it's good until the end of that last month. So that's the BSA rule. If you have any questions about that, please reach out. But we do need copies on paper for each individual attending of the BSA annual health and medical record. For each individual, so that's all youth and all adult participants must have a copy of the BSA annual health and medical record. If a participant comes without this form, they will have to leave the site until they can get a physical performed. Next, we've got a quick note on the immunization exemption form. So the immunization exemption form should be attached to the BSA annual health and medical record for any participant to whom that applies. That is a BSA form, and it will be included in the follow-up email that I'll send out after the meeting. The next note is the summit-specific waiver. This is an electronic form that is completed by the parent or guardian of anyone under the age of 18 and by the participant for any participants who are over the age of 18. This form is generated through the event management system, which is the system through which you registered. And so that form is completed electronically. If you have any questions or issues with that form, for the most part, folks are able to complete that no problem. But if you do have any issues, please reach out and we'll be happy to help. Next is a whitewater waiver. So the whitewater rafting is a built-in piece of the summit experience. And so that means that as part of the summit experience, all participants go whitewater rafting. So we do need whitewater waivers on paper at check-in. So that form is available online and in the leader's guide, and it will also be included in the follow-up email after the meeting. So if you aren't sure what that form is or looks like, we will get that too. Finally, and this, some of you may have experience with this at other camps, some of you may not. All adult participants, so anyone over the age of 18, must show physical proof of youth protection training completion. This can be printed, it can be a roster that's generated, or it can be shown to our registration team on a mobile device. But anyone over the age of 18 is an adult, and anyone over the age of 18 must show physical proof of completion of youth protection training. So please make sure to have that so you're not trying to pull that up during the check-in process. Two other notes here. So medical exemptions of any sort can be requested using the form linked here. That form is reviewed by the summit doctor and Dr. Wilson, who will follow up individually with anyone who's requesting any exemptions. And then finally, there was a question earlier about specific dietary needs. Our food service team is still working out exactly what that process looks like. And so I'm going to provide an update either at the next webinar or before. And I'll also provide some follow-up information about reaching out in the meantime or some specific considerations. So that's a list of the forms that individuals will need when they check in. There are a couple of other notes here. So first, a note on arriving to the summit. So the note here is that if you have participated in a summit summer program that wasn't Jamboree before, the typical sequence was you checked in at the Ruby Welcome Center before you came to the site. This year, that is not the case, and check-in will check-in will be at the Piggott headquarters building. And so that is on the site. And so you'll come to the north gate before checking in. So that's a change from previous years that we want to note. Specific details about arrival and arrival day and check-in will be shared later with you by email. The official arrival window is between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on your check-in day. However, arrival before, during, or after this window is acceptable. There's also a question submitted that we'll address at the end about arriving early or arriving late. That is an option if your crew needs that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end when we address some of those submitted questions. Okay. So a program note here, like I mentioned before, every participant must have whitewater rafting waivers. We collect these on paper because the whitewater activities are facilitated by trained facilitators who are employed by local outfitters. And so waivers are checked for each participant before they leave the property, and they're collected on your arrival day. Like I mentioned before, the whitewater waiver will be included in the follow-up email, so be looking for that after the meeting. A quick note on sorting. Our registration team prefers that forms are sorted alphabetically by type and not by participant. So that means all of the annual health and medical records are put together in alphabetical order. All of your whitewater waivers are put together in alphabetical order and sorted alphabetically by type, not by participant. So that hopefully will just save you some time when you arrive. Another note on swim checks. So aquatics activities in the form of whitewater rafting and potentially aquatics on Goodrich Lake West, so like our on-site aquatics programs, are part of the summit experience. Individuals in participating units should have completed a swim classification test before they arrive at the summit. Crews should bring 2 copies of their swim classification test listing the youth and adults according to their swimming ability. So that would be non-swimmer, beginner, or swimmer. We'll provide buddy tags to you to fill out, or they will be filled in for you when you arrive. So a note here, so buddy tags, the physical buddy tag itself is not needed for when you go whitewater rafting. However, participants who go whitewater rafting have to be classified as swimmers to participate in that program. A swim test master form is referenced here. You're welcome to use that form, or you can use the general BSA swim classification form. There's no distinction as long as it's recorded and the test is administered in the spirit that it was intended to be administered, then we'll be all set. So that is a note on swim checks. Next, we have a note on food service and specific dietary needs. So your breakfast and dinner each day will be served at the Fork in the Road dining hall. 3 out of your 5 days on which you eat lunch here at the summit, you will be provided a pack-out meal, or kind of a brown bag lunch, essentially. If you've been here in the past, it was a Philmont pack-out meal. This year, we're going in a little bit different direction and hopefully enhancing that experience a little bit more. So we're working on providing some better options and kind of fuller, more traditional lunch type meals as opposed to the bag of high protein, high salt food that you get from Philmont. So we will provide additional details about those packouts and food service in general in April. As I mentioned before, we do take very seriously specific dietary needs here at the summit. However, so you may have submitted a specific need on a form already. If you have, that's totally fine. If you haven't, there will be an updated form, an updated method that our food service team is developing that I'll share with you. If you have any specific concerns about dietary needs, please don't hesitate to reach out. We can easily accommodate most needs, and so we don't want that to take away from the experience for any of your scouts or leaders. We can, like I said, we can accommodate, we just need to know about them. So please reach out if you have any concerns. And finally, participants are welcome to bring and store supplemental food of their own. And I would recommend that particularly if there's a concern about accommodating maybe a specific variety of needs for an individual. So just a note there on food service and specific dietary needs. Next, we'll talk about camping accommodations. So dome tents, the type that's shown in the picture on the slide, are provided to participants. I've had it asked several times, so it's totally fine if participants want to bring their own tents. Youth and adults both are more than welcome to bring a tent of their own. Cots are provided for all participants, so whether you decide to use one of our tents or not, we will have a cot for you. We do provide dining canopies and picnic tables in your campsite areas. For the most part in Bravo, the showers that are accessible are hot showers, so that's good news there. There are a couple of cold showers around if you would prefer that, so you will have both options. So we also, there's AT&T Wi-Fi available pretty much in all of the Summit centers, so kind of the main program areas of the Summit all have access to Wi-Fi. And we'll also provide a detailed list in the follow-up email for individuals for packing list reasons. So like for individual needs and suggestions that, things we recommend, we'll send a list out to this, our email list, so that you have that when your participants are packing that. A couple of notes here. So we will have more than enough tents for your adults to stay in tents individually. The default is for youth to stay 2 to a tent. We do have extra tents around. In many ways, we have those tents around for situations in which there's more than, say, a 2-year age difference between one scout and another, or there's a registered gender difference between one scout and another. And so we do keep plenty of tents. So if that's like a concern, we do have more than enough. So, but the default is that youth will share tents and adults will have their own. As I mentioned before, you're more than welcome to bring your own tent if you would like. So those are our camping accommodations. So we have a winner selected randomly in our Excel export for our first giveaway. So our first giveaway is Brian Duncan. So Brian Duncan, you have won our first giveaway. And Brian, I am making a note of your name, and I will follow up with you after the meeting to make sure that I've got your mailing address. So congratulations to Brian Duncan, and we'll have another giveaway here at the end. All right. Next, we'll be talking about the program structure and some notes around what that looks like. So first off, each of the groups arriving for the Summit experience are organized by their arrival day. So for example, everyone arriving on June 16th will be part of SE 061624, and then you'll have a letter in the suffix that represents the order in which you registered. So you are organized into program patrols by the date of your arrival. And so if you arrive on June 16th, or you'll be in a program patrol with other units that arrive on June 16th. If you arrive on June 15th, you'll be in a group with other units that arrive on June 15th. So that's how program patrols are formed and composed. So program patrols, in most cases, virtually all, but not quite all this summer, are crews of scouts and leaders from different units, and you will experience the summit experience together. So program patrols vary in size. The average size of a program patrol will be 40 individuals, youth and adults included. And so that group will move from program area to program area throughout their experience here at the summit. So that is a program patrol. That's kind of the basic structure that we have for the summit experience. So in the summit experience, very fortunate to be supported by some incredible staff members called Mountain Rovers. Mountain Rovers are the staff members assigned to Summit Experience program patrols. Mountain Rovers will be with you pretty much for your entire stay. There may be an activity or two in which they don't participate with you, but otherwise they'll be with you. They'll be your guides from activity to activity, and they will be kind of your portal into all that the summit has to offer. So the Mountain Rover will work with your units and with their program patrol to ensure that your youth and adults are getting all that they can from the experience, and taking care and making sure that they know about all of the programs and other opportunities that are available. A quick note here, Mountain Rovers are not crew leaders, and they're not substitutes for youth leaders or adult leaders. So this is still a high adventure experience. The supervision for which is primarily provided by the attending adults, and the leadership for which ideally is provided by the youth in your units who are attending. Okay, a quick note on the daily structure, and a slightly more detailed daily schedule will be a part of our next webinar. But each morning at 7 a.m. a morning assembly will be held outside of the dining hall. There will be a flag ceremony, and this is the time at which Summit Experience participants will get any updates and set off for their adventure for the day with their Mountain Rovers. So that's the morning assembly that happens each morning. Again, we'll have some additional details about this particular part of the Summit Experience, along with some other scheduling notes at our next meeting. Speaking of scheduling, many have questions about what the day-to-day of the Summit Experience looks like. So the schedule here is a screenshot from the leader's guide, which was emailed and is available online. This table shows by day the activities in which Summit Experience program patrols will participate. And so, as you can see, excuse me, on the date of arrival, most of the day will be set aside for units to arrive. So we have wildly varying arrival times. We have folks arrive by plane, train, and automobile here. And so because of that, there's an array of arrival times. And so the bulk of that day is set aside just to arrive and get to camp, get checked in, and get the campsite set up. In the evening, typically after dinner, it is possible that it will occur before dinner, depending on the arrival times of the crews. There is an orientation with the Mountain Rover. And then depending on the day of your arrival, there may be evening programs available also. So there are a couple of nights where there are no evening programs. On most nights, there are evening programs. And so if there aren't evening programs available on the night of your arrival, There certainly will be throughout your stay. Then the sequence goes, your first full day, or day 2 on this table, is the aerial sports day. So participants will start off at the rocks and then do the canopy zipline tour, and then Alexander's Eagle Flight. Alexander's Eagle Flight was formerly known as the Big Zip. And so that's kind of the signature venue here at the summit that most folks know. That's our 3,100-foot zip line over Tri-Dave Lake, which is pretty spectacular. The next day we'll start off with Hunter's Education and Skills Center, which is our virtual range we call Laser Shot, and then mountain biking. Day 4 goes into the target sports activities, so archery, like 5 different kinds of archery, and then the barrels, so various rifle shooting, and then and shotgun at the 5 stand. Day 5 will be the park, skateboarding, and the tracks, BMX. So those are kind of co-located at a venue called Thrasher Mountain. And so on that day, the participants will spend morning and afternoon at the park and the tracks. Day 6 will be the whitewater rafting trip on the New River, which is super fun and everybody loves. And if you're not too tired out by that exciting whitewater trip, we offer on-site aquatics or a service project opportunity. And we'll have more detail about what that service project will look like on the next webinar. That will be the program for that afternoon. And then for the closing program on your final day, that will be a program with your program patrol specifically. And that will actually occur after any evening program for that evening, so that your scouts can still participate in that, and your mountain rover will provide some additional details for you there. And then day 7 will be the day that you depart. We do offer breakfast before your departure, so you're more than welcome to partake before heading home. So that's a good general overview. As I note on the slide, some small adjustments are still possible, but relatively unlikely. I think the biggest difference from this schedule might be that the canopy zipline tour might be the afternoon, and Alexander's Eagle Flight might be during the middle of the day. So I only offer that to say that whatever changes there may be will be pretty small. So no major changes are expected from this schedule. Okay. So next, this is a quick overview of some of our program facilities here at the summit. As I mentioned before, the summit experience gives participants access to all of the on-site high adventure venues that we have here. So that begins with the rocks, which includes rock climbing, rappelling, and the leap of faith. Then Alexander's Eagle Flight, again, formerly known as the Big Zip, which is our signature 3,100-foot zip line. The Canopy, which is our tree-to-tree zip line tour. So you get to float among the trees and get the experience and interpretation from our guides on some of the history and natural features of the summit site. We have Low Gear in the Harvey Bike Shop, which is our mountain biking venue. Hunter's Hall in the Craft and Skill Center, which is our incredible hunter education and laser shot venue. We also have the barrels and the bows, which I've actually just learned today. The bows will be back open again for full operation. So bows and barrels for shooting sports and archery. As I mentioned on the last slide, the park and the tracks for skateboarding and BMX. And then the New River Gorge, so America's now second newest national park, because there is a newer one that was just announced, on the world's 4th oldest river. So the New River is the 4th oldest river, fun fact there. And then finally, Goodrich Lake, which is the venue for our on-site aquatics here at the summit. So this is a quick overview of our program facilities. If you visit summitbsa.org, the summit website, you can learn more about the program venues, the people after whom they're named, and all of the things that they offer. So someone asked a question about some of the evening activities. So the activities listed on this slide are activities that occur or are held, or the venues for which are in the Scott Summit Center, which is kind of the main area, or the main kind of the heart of the summit. And these venues include Action Point, which is the home of our skate park and BMX activities, separate from the park and the tracks, which are the high adventure venues. It also includes our venue for mountain biking, which is available during program time and during some of the evenings. Visits to the Sustainability Treehouse are available in the evenings. So that's part of the Summit Sustainability Award, which we will discuss a little bit during our next webinar. We'll have aquatics activities open at Goodrich Lake West sometimes in the evenings. Boulder Cove will be open on Tuesday and Thursday evenings for climbing. We have, I think they call it El Pollo Loco, which is the like 513 route, which is pretty tough on there. So even though that's like more of a scout camp venue, there is some cool challenge available for your scouts there. The Legacy and Gateway zip lines will be open at least on Thursdays and likely on Saturdays and Sundays. As evening activities, we'll have Goose Chase, which is a mobile application that your scouts can use, kind of like a mobile scavenger hunt, and Appalachian Celebration, which is a camp-wide event. Again, we'll talk more about these specific programs during our next webinar, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask them here or reach out individually, and I'll be more than happy to talk with you about what those programs look like. Okay. A quick note on Hunter Education, which is one of our programs here. So all Summit Experience participants visit the Hunter Education program. If you or a leader or a scout in your group want to earn the Hunter Education card, which can be exchanged for a license in all 50 states, there are some specific steps that they need to follow. I am not going to detail those steps right now, but I am going to send a document in the follow-up materials for this meeting that explain what to do and how to do it. And then if you have any questions, please reach out and I'll be happy to help. So again, that's a quick note. If you have anyone who is working toward getting that hunting license, there are some specific steps that they'll need to follow. Again, we're not going to delve into all of those right on this call. I will send out that information, and if you have any questions, please reach out and we'll be happy to discuss. Okay. Our next section will address physical preparations and other notes. So I think a couple of folks have asked kind of what does a typical day look like? So on a typical day, or on many days, you can expect to walk between 8 and 10 miles. Some activities that we offer will be strenuous and test your limits. We are challenged by choice. All of our activities are challenged by choice. And so if there's anything that you as an adult participant or your youth as youth participants do not want to do, they don't have to. We are challenged by choice. So there are some days where your walking will be far less. So if you see that 8 to 10 miles a day, I don't want anyone to worry too much, but you should be physically prepared. So for example, on the day that your crew visits Hunter Hall and does mountain biking, you'll walk considerably less than a day on which you do aerial sports, where you have to hike to venues and hike between venues. The good news is that after you complete the Big Zip or Alexander Eagle flight, you'll be right in the Summit Center. So you'll be, that's a little bit of an expedited way to get back to where you're going on that day. But we do encourage participants to be prepared. So start preparing now if you haven't already. Ways that you can do this. Practice hikes as a group are fantastic. That allows some opportunities for your youth and adults to do some forming and norming before they get to the summit. if your group isn't able to coordinate that, or or can't do that often enough, please work on individual preparations, and please encourage the adults and scouts in your group to do individual workouts or hikes, or walk on the treadmill, whatever that looks like. So typically, most participants will carry a day pack with about 15 pounds of weight. That actually seems slightly high to me, but you will be carrying some water and a few other personal supplies, and lunch on 3 out of the 5 days. We encourage you to hike on hilly terrain. Again, hiking on any terrain is better than nothing. Running, biking, any aerobic exercise is recommended. So regarding the BSA height weight guidelines, someone I think mentioned this earlier. The height weight guidelines that are on the BSA annual health and medical record are listed here. Participants should meet these height weight guidelines. If you have any questions or concerns about this, I've listed on this slide the contact information for our health lodge. As we discussed before, you can also request a medical exemption if you don't meet or don't quite meet that height weight guideline for your weight for your height. And so if you have any questions, please reach out. We'll be happy to help. So again, this is the general recommendation. This is what participants will be expected to fall into each of these categories or sections here. So if you have any concerns, please let us know. Okay, so our next note here is Scout Connections. So if you have any extra room in your crew, or if there's a scout in your group who can't attend but would like to go later in the summer, this helps connect scouts and units who are looking for either an additional scout or a unit with whom to attend. So you can access that at Scout Connections. You can access that at the Scout Connections URL or scan the QR code here. Okay. Quick plug for Summit staff. We are still hiring. We are actually have a great, we're having a pretty good luck hiring so far. So we've hired a tremendous number of staff already. It does take about 300 individuals to operate the summer each for our seasonal programming. So if you know anyone over the age of 18, maybe a recent scout turned scouter, we would love to talk with them about what a Summit summer looks like. You can find more information at summitbsa.org/jobs or by scanning the QR code. There are still, I think, 48 open roles. So we have lots of opportunities. Things that involve sitting inside in an office all day to facilitating a RIPS course, or facilitating shooting sports, or being an ATV guide. So a whole array of opportunities for anyone over the age of 18 looking for the coolest summer job that they will ever have. So some information there. On our next webinar, we will discuss opportunities for other awards. And so if you have any specific questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to assist. Like I said, we will discuss these opportunities listed here and others in a little more detail during our next webinar. Okay, so at this point, I will answer the submitted questions, and then we'll do one more giveaway, and then we'll have kind of an open question and answer period. So someone asked, any travel recommendations from Charleston Yeager to the summit? So yes, I've listed the page on which those recommendations can be found in the leader's guide on the slide. It's page 25. Additionally, I'm going to copy and paste. One moment. I'm going to copy and paste the options that we list that are listed there. So I'll send these in the follow-up email. So you'll have those, but these are the places that we recommend if you are flying or need transportation between where you are and the summit. A quick note that is reflected in the leader's guide, but not reflected in the list that I just put in the chat. If you are arriving to the summit by train and you're arriving at the Prince or Thurmond station, we do provide transportation because there aren't really many other options. So if you have specific questions about that, please reach out. Otherwise, the arrangements and local vendors with whom we work or whom we recommend are included in on that page of the leader's guide and in the chat there. Okay. Let's see. So can we add an extra day before or after our experience begins? The answer to that question is yes. And you can make these arrangements through the event management system on your arrival card, the details about which will be shared with you in April. And so you will be able to add an extra day before and or after, which many units do because of travel schedules, particularly with air travel and trains. So can we bring our own tents and cots? Absolutely, like we've discussed already. So you're more than welcome to. We do provide those. However, you're welcome to bring your own. Okay, and then the last question that was submitted in advance. This question was, I'm an adult leader. I may not pass the swim classification test or may not be classified as a swimmer, we should say. Can my scouts still participate in aquatics activities? And the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. So while adults are full participants, like I mentioned before, all of our programs are challenged by choice or ability. And so we're not going to make you do anything that you're uncomfortable doing. So no worries there. So you can get ready for adventure. It wouldn't be a scouting meeting without a plug for the trading post with Garden Ground Outfitters. I did notice a question in the chat earlier about custom crew t-shirts. I believe that is open. However, if it is not, I will follow up and I will include information. I will include information about that in the follow-up email. So if you have a question about custom crew shirts and haven't been able to order those yet, I will talk with our retail manager tomorrow to make sure that we clear up the confusion there and make sure that everyone has access to the correct link and all of the information that they need. So our next webinar, we do have one more webinar scheduled. Will be on April 24th at 7 p.m. We'll send a reminder in advance of the meeting, including the joining information. As you did for this meeting, please feel free to share the meeting information with any stakeholders who would benefit from participating. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out if we can help. This meeting, our second webinar, just like this meeting, will be recorded, and all of the supporting materials and documents will be emailed within about 24 hours of that meeting ending. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a giveaway quickly, and then I will get to the questions in the chat. So our next giveaway from a random Excel sort is Ellen Brennan. So Ellen Brennan is our second webinar giveaway winner. And Ellen, I will be reaching out to you very soon to get a mailing address for you, and we'll send you some great summit swag right to your door. So congratulations, Ellen, and congratulations, Brian, from earlier. All right, so here is that key contact information. Again, we will share this information in the follow-up email. So if you didn't get that down, you'll have access to it. So at this point, I will say that if you have all the information you need, you're welcome to leave. Like I said, I will be going through the chat to answer all of the submitted questions. And so I will be going through that for a little bit now. And then at the very end of that, I will allow participants to unmute if they have any questions that they want to ask. So if you are leaving us now, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to start answering the questions here now. Okay. So the first question here is, how do you handle a final payment when a scout is waiting on a campership determination? So what we recommend is to hold off paying for that scout until you are notified of the decision on the campership. So campership funds are applied directly to your cruise balance for the individual to whom they are awarded. And I will include additional information about camperships in the follow-up email. But that's a good question. You can hold off on paying for any scouts who are waiting on a campership determination. That's a good question. Okay. Next question asks, do we need for medical and YPT, can we bring these or can we just submit them online? I do wish the answer was that you could submit them online. Right now, that is not the case. So you should bring a copy of your annual health and medical record. So only bring the original if you don't want it back. And you should have some proof of YPT for anyone over the age of 18. And so that can be proof on a phone, that can be proof on paper, it can be a unit roster, whatever makes the most sense and is easiest. But we like to be very upfront that we require those things when you check in, because we don't want anyone to have to wait on pulling those up or logging into MyDuck Scouting to find that information. John asked a question about, is wilderness first aid required? Wilderness first aid is not required for Summit Experience participants. It is required for some of the other high adventure programs that are offered at the Summit, but is not required for the Summit Experience because you'll be on site with access to our medical team, which is pretty robust as it goes for scout camps. We have a full-time paramedic in addition to 5 emergency medical technicians, and we have an MD on site during the summer too. So there's great access to on-site medical care and very easy access to local medical care too. We have a question about, do leaders go with their units whitewater rafting? You can, typically they do, but you don't have to. We have a question, is there an alternative activity for whitewater rafting? So there is not an alternative activity by default for whitewater rafting. If there's a specific concern, reach out to us on an individual basis, and we can talk about what alternative arrangements might be available. The next question is, are leaders 2 per tent as well? So you're more than welcome to be, if you are a leader 2 to a tent. We do have enough tents in the area for leaders to be 1 to a tent, and like I mentioned before, enough tents to take into account any YPT considerations. The next question is, do you provide boxes to store bathroom supplies? So we do provide a couple of storage boxes for smellables. Additionally, parking for Summit Experience participants will be quite close to where you are camping. And so if you need to store anything in a vehicle or a trailer, you're welcome to bring those, but we do provide boxes. I will say that we do have some very active bears here. They are black bears, and so they are generally more scared of you than you are of them, believe it or not. But we still do not encourage, in fact, we expressly discourage interaction with the black bears. So we do provide some areas where you can store smellable items. So this meeting is going to be, the link to the recording for this meeting will be emailed. So please share that with your groups once you receive that. We have a question about the camp-wide activities from 6 to 8 p.m. So I mentioned, so all of the activities listed on the slide for the Summit Center activities are representations of what's offered during that 6 to 8 p.m. block. But basically activities in the Summit Center that are, for the most part, a pretty brief walk from where your scouts will be camping and eating are provided in the evenings. The next question is, are patrols walking from site to site like at Jamboree? So you will be walking. Walking is the primary mode of transportation that Summit Experience participants employ. However, it will be you'll be led by your mountain rover, who knows the best routes and the best ways to get to places. So, but the primary mode of transportation is your feet, and so for the most part, you will be walking from venue to venue. We have a question about, is the swim test done on site or separately? We strongly encourage you to complete your swim checks before you arrive. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to have a lifeguard. The person who conducts the swim test does have to have some training, and you should check with your local council because local councils can set specific parameters for who can conduct a swim test. But in general, the goal is that the swim test is conducted by someone who will conduct it as written without variation. Let's see. The next question, how many program patrols are there during a typical week? Do they all have different schedules? So they all have the same schedule. They all have the same schedule, but there are 5 arrival days per week. So typically the highest number of participants on site for the Summit Experience at once would be 200. You will see other program patrols in your camping and in your eating areas. However, 1 program patrol per day goes to each venue. So as an example, all crews will do aerial sports on their first full day of program. However, only 1 40-person program patrol will do aerial sports on any given day. So everyone has the same sequencing, but only 1 program patrol arrives per day, and there are 5 arrival days per week. Let's see. So as we mentioned before, 8 to 10 miles is what those are the conditions for which you should prepare. There will be days where you walk far less, but 8 to 10 miles is a good goal. So we have any question about any recommended equipment for the day pack? That will be included on the individual packing list that we send out after the meeting. But typically it's any personal things that a scout or a leader might want. Okay, we have a question about, will participants be weighed? Yes, there is a weigh-in if there is a question or a specific concern about a participant. Again, if you have questions about height, weight, restrictions, guidelines, please reach out to the Summit Health Lodge because they can answer definitively any questions. And so similarly, the next two questions are kind of in that same vein. So yes, height, weight guidelines are the same for males and females. And someone asked about a variant. So I will say typically our health and safety team is pretty accommodating and will work with you to make sure that you can participate safely. I will say that while the health and safety team at the summit may be able to provide an exception or a variance, especially for folks who are just slightly off the mark, there are the weight limits for particularly the aerial sports venues, so like the Big Zip, are not negotiable. So the maximum is 250 pounds, and you are weighed at check-in for the event. Next question we have is medical office location and nearest hospital locations. So there are several local hospitals. So there's a fairly major hospital in Beckley, West Virginia, which is about 25 minutes from the summit. There's a smaller hospital in Oak Hill, which is only about 10 minutes from the summit. And there are a number of smaller clinics and urgent cares around. As I mentioned before, we do have a pretty robust on-site medical staff too. And so if you or any of your participants need something, we should be able to pretty well take care of them. So we have a question about if groups can choose their own arrival times. So yes, you aren't sent, nor do you have to claim with any finality your arrival time. So you can arrive whenever works best for you. Like I mentioned before, the encouraged arrival time is between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on the date of your scheduled arrival day. However, you can arrive before, during, or after that time period, and that's totally fine. On your arrival information, which I briefly referenced earlier, and we'll discuss in more detail at our next webinar, during our next webinar, you will be asked to identify a window. So if you think you're going to arrive at 2 p.m., you can put 2 p.m. It's totally fine if you don't arrive at 2 p.m. and then you can arrive at 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. We will still accommodate you and let you on the site. So no worries there. But we will ask for your arrival time just for our planning purposes. Okay, next, so you can absolutely bring your troop trailer. Do you need a trailer? No, but you're welcome to bring a trailer, and it can be parked and accessed, like I said, relatively easily from your camping area. Like we discussed before, no adult leader is required, no individual is required to have wilderness first aid training to participate in the summit experience. Our next question, do groups need to reserve campsites or tents? The answer is no. So your tents and cots are provided. We keep more than enough on hand to accommodate any, really, like I mentioned before, any situation. And you will be assigned a campsite based on your arrival day. I will say that more or less all of the campsites are the same. So no worries about getting the getting the right thing or not. Let's see. The next question is the next. So the next webinar will be additional information about the Summit Experience program, including some more specific information on the program schedule and some of the youth leadership roles. Let's see. So we have a question about duffel bags. So yeah, it's really up to you. Duffel bags are fine, footlockers are fine, backpacks are fine. Lots of folks fly here. We have people who have suitcases. So the good news is you actually won't have to carry your things too far. But I would say in general, like the more mobile you're packing, the better. But that's it's up to you. Really any reasonable method of packing should be fine. Let's see. Yeah, so we do have we have a suggested equipment list that I will include in the follow-up email after the meeting. So that's a list of equipment for your scouts and a couple of your unit. Excuse me, a couple of unit items too. But that's so we'll share that after the meeting. Let's see, the next question is about tenting arrangements. Are the scouts camping to a tent from their own troop or from our patrol? So typically from your own troop. Like I mentioned, if you have an uneven number or an age difference or a gender difference that's not acceptable for youth protection reasons, then we have plenty of extra tents on hand for those considerations. So I would say the important thing there is that like no scout will be put with a tent mate with whom they're uncomfortable. So no worries there. The next question is, do we have a restriction on the number of vehicles per group? No, we don't. We will ask you in the on your arrival information. Like I said, that'll be shared in April. That where we'll ask like how many vehicles you're bringing. But that's but no restriction on the number of vehicles that you can bring. So yes, married couples are allowed to share a tent. That is fine under youth protection guidelines. Let's see. So the next question is, we are bringing a girl unit. Are we required to provide 2 female leaders for the whitewater rafting? Can 1 female leader attend? Yeah, so one female leader can attend, and as Carrie mentions in her reply, there's no one-on-one, so youth protection is covered, and the river guides themselves, the staff of the outfitters who facilitate that program, are actually youth protection trained, so no worries there. There's plenty of adult coverage, and they'll be all set. Next question is, if scouts take a swim test at another camp, do they need another for the summit? The answer is no. In fact, it's rarely the case, but if you have all the same folks participating, you can use the same form. So as long as there's a swim test form that is, from a BSA source, either the official swim classification record on scouting.org, the summit specific form, or any other camp form, then we will typically accept that. So no worries there. If you have any specific questions or concerns there, reach out to me on an individual basis, and I can try to help out. Okay, next question. If a scout has physical limitations, are there alternatives to hiking the far distances? The answer to that question is yes. We are fortunate to have a really robust and accommodating transportation team here at the summit. And so if you have a scout or a leader who has physical limitations, please don't hesitate to reach out. In fact, now is the best time to do that, so that we can make arrangements far in advance for those who need them. But yeah, that's a great question, and no scout or leader will miss out on anything in which they want to participate because of a physical limitation if we can safely accommodate them. Next question, what occurs in the event of inclement weather? So typically, in the case of inclement weather, we do have some alternative activities, and we usually are able to move around the scheduled activity for the day to and get that in at another period. So that's typically how we handle inclement weather planning. So each of the areas that you'll visit will have an inclement weather plan. So Sarah mentions that the website for ordering custom crew t-shirts says it's down due to technical issues. So yeah, I'll follow up with that. And I've made a note, so I'll put information about the crew t-shirt orders in that follow-up email. So we'll make sure that everyone has access to that who would like it. So let's see. So the next question is there a minimum weight to participate in whitewater rafting? The answer is no. There's no minimum weight for whitewater rafting. The only minimum weights we have are for the zip lines. It's 50 pounds for every zip line on the site, except for the Big Zip or Alexander Eagle Flight, and the weight, the minimum weight for that is 80 pounds, but no weight restriction for whitewater. The next question is, how long are the bike trails? So there are miles and miles of bike trails. I'm going to make a note of that, and in the follow-up email, I will give you some insight. So I will say that they provide challenge, but aren't too strenuous. So, but I'll follow up with some specific information on bike trails in that follow-up email. Let's see. Okay, next question. Does the summit provide mountain bikes and skateboards? So yes. So the summit provides all of the equipment for all of the activities that you will do. So all of the personal protective equipment and the hardware that's required. So for skateboarding, we have the skateboards. For mountain bikings, we have the bikes. For BMX, we have the bikes. So really, really almost everything you need, we provide. So no worries there. Let's see. Next question is, we need to add a night on the front end of our trip. So you'll be able to book that in April when the arrival information portal in the event management system opens. The registration team will send you an email about that. But if you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be more than happy to help. Okay. Yes, so food is provided for all days of the events, and of the event. So that starts with dinner on the day of your arrival and ends with breakfast on the day of your departure, unless you've scheduled an extra day at the beginning and or end of your trip. So otherwise, food is provided from the evening or dinner of your arrival through breakfast of the morning of your departure. So there's a question about if weather cancels zip lines or other events, can they be made up later? The answer is typically yes. There was not a case last summer where a group missed an event that they couldn't make up later. So we are very aware and very very sensitive to ensuring that your scouts and leaders get the full experience. Let's see. So the next question is, what's the difference between camp and the restroom? So the good news is that restrooms for your scouts will never be far away. In the camping area, polygons, which are what we call the restrooms here, are never more than a few hundred feet away. So you'll be very close to facilities pretty much at all times. Do married leader couples count as only one leader? No. So married leader couples, as long as they are both registered, are to count for two leaders. But let me know if there's any other consideration that that question needs. Let's see. So the next question is about who do we reach out to about those accommodations. So I'll put my email address in the chat here. If you email me, I'll be more than happy to talk with you about those arrangements. You can also call or text me at this number. It's typically just easier, right, when there are when we can discuss specific situations kind of offline, but more than happy to do that and make those arrangements. Okay. Next question: can scouts bring bikes to get from place to place for some experience? So currently the answer to that is no. We don't allow bikes to get from place to place. That's a national BSA rule for the summit. We are working on potentially adjusting that in the future, but as for now, we personal bikes for movement between program venues are not allowed. Let's see. We have a question: do scouts need to bring helmets for biking and skateboarding? No, those are provided. So all of the pads, helmets, all of the gear needed for all the activities is provided. Let's see. So okay, so there is no parent visitation night. This is a high adventure experience, and so there, as part of that, there's no family or participation night. I will say that if you have some parents who want to visit, kind of maybe outside the context of a parent visitation night, we do have family adventure camp, and I will include a link to that in the follow-up email. And so that could be a way that a family could visit their scout while they are participating in the summit program. So I'll send information about that in the follow-up email. The next question we have: if we arrive the day before, what do we do for food. So food is provided if you have paid for an early arrival or a late departure. If you haven't paid for an early arrival or late departure, then you you won't be on the site. So we provide food for the duration of your program, and we provide food for any early arrivals or late departures that you schedule. Let's see. So I'm not sure what the question, will the whitewater registration info be given? I'm not sure what that means. Every crew goes on a whitewater trip as part of the summit experience. And so Ross, if you could clarify that question, I'd appreciate that because I'm not sure that I answered that. Okay, there's a question about if we can find a list of which merit badges correspond to each activity. So we do not maintain that list because the focus of the summit experience is the high adventure programming rather than the advancement aspect. If you have any specific questions, I can help answer those, and I'll also try to put together some notes on activities in the summit experience that correspond to merit badge requirements. But again, the focus of our scout camp here is advancement, whereas the focus of the summit experience and other similar programs is adventure and challenge. Let's see. So there are a couple of questions at the end here about if we're staying an extra day, can we sign up for extra activities or can we leave camp? So if you are arriving a day early or staying a day late, there may be activities on the site in which you can participate, particularly in the evening. However, we do not guarantee that there will be any activities on site during the day or in the evening in which you can participate. So that's a note there. So the extra day includes the accommodation like in the Summit Experience camping area, and it includes the meals for the early arrival and or late departure, but it does not include any additional programming. The next question is like, if you arrive that day early, can we leave and visit the national park? And the answer is yes. If you arrive early or stay late, you can leave the site to visit some of the local attractions. And those are actually some of the ones that we recommend are listed in our leader's guide. But that absolutely is an option. And that I would say is probably your best bet. But if you have any questions, specific questions about that, we're more than happy to help. So please reach out on an individual basis if you have any questions about like activities for early arrivals or late departures. Okay, so we've reached the end of the questions in the chat. So I'm going to say that our meeting has concluded. I'll hang out for several more minutes, and I'll also allow individuals to unmute themselves to ask questions if they prefer that. So otherwise, we are finished. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're looking forward to seeing you very soon. And like I mentioned before, you can unmute if you would like and ask a question. I'm also still looking at the chat. So feel free to chime in or type a question. Otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic evening. And thanks again for joining us.
This is Ross.
Hi, Ross.
Hey, I was wondering, so I thought there was like a third party that we had to sign up with the whitewater rafting. That's why I was asking that. But
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So the good news is it's included. And so there's
okay, good.
Yeah, so yeah, there's nothing extra or special you have to do.
Oh, super. Okay, that clears it up. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for clarifying because I didn't get that from
Yeah, I
what
should
was
have
typed
worded
in.
it better. My
No,
fault.
that's totally cool. I just want to make sure I answered it.
Okay.
Let's
So
see.
everyone who comes is doing whitewater if they want to, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. So we have a question. How do we add the early arrival day to our reservation? The answer is on the arrival information that we will send to the primary leader, unit leader contact in April. And our registration team will send a follow-up email um, about that arrival information. And if you have any questions, please reach out and we'll be happy to help. But that information is coming soon, but it's not available yet. All right. Any other questions from anyone tonight?
I just want to say thank you. You did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you so much, Angela. I really appreciate that. Let's see. So the summit is in the Eastern time zone. So it is 8:30 here. So Don, no worries there. I will send a complete recording of the meeting along with the slides that we used and all of the supporting documents. So you should get all the information that you need that way. But if not, my contact information is on the slides and will be in my email. So feel free to just get in touch if I can help with anything after.
We have a group that's going to be at summer camp also, and we were hoping to camp together. Is there anything special we need to do to prepare for that or make arrangements?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing I will say is that we typically discourage that. It is an option, but we discourage it, and the reason I'll tell you the reason why is because of how it affects the experience for one group or the other. So typically, when Summit Experience and Scout Camp groups do camp together, they camp together in Delta, which is where kind of the home base of Scout Camp. And then the Summit Experience group either meets up with their group daily or they hike over or drive over in the morning to meet up with their group. So either option is fine, and either option is viable. I will just tell you from our experience, we had, I think, 2 or 3 groups who tried that last year, and it wasn't the best arrangement. So it is possible, and we can do that. So if you do want that, just reach out individually, and I'll include some information about that in the follow-up email. But that's I do like to be upfront about our recommendation there.
We had asked about it earlier, and is the most negative thing one group has to walk farther than the other, or just the experience of being in 2 different places, or what?
I would say the logistics of so like I said, the Summit Experience groups always camped with the Scout Camp groups was how it always ended up. And so the Summit Experience participants are with their group from 7 in the morning through dinner. So there's no problem on our end with like accommodation wise or feeding participants in one dining hall or the next. However, I just so it's totally fine if you guys want to do that. We are supportive of it. We do like to just offer the insight from other units and the units that typically do it kind of almost universally don't like it. But we can make those arrangements, and you can drive over to meet your group in the morning, so you don't have to you don't have to make the full hike over every morning for Summit Experience for your Summit Experience group. Just the logistics can be challenging, and so I'm happy to discuss that further too if you want to give me a call, and we can work out any details too.
Maybe I'll touch base with you later and we can discuss it a bit more.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, like I said, it is definitely an option. We want to preview it in a realistic way so that people don't think that it's don't have
Okay.
expectations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So the question about maps. Yeah, so I've got a map that I can include, and we also use an app on which that actually will geolocate you when you're on the summit site. So I'll send information for accessing both of those. And then, yeah, Andrew, so if you reach out to me or to the Summit program team, the summit.program@scouting.org email, we should be able to help you change your representative that's listed in the EMS.
Hey, is there electricity nearby if we want to run a cord for a CPAP machine?
Yes, there is. So electricity is pretty easily accessible from all of the Summit Experience camping areas.
So you said I should bring like a 50-foot or 100-foot extension cord or something?
I would recommend that. We have plenty of extension cords on site. So if you don't want to lug one around, or if you're air traveling, we've got plenty. So if you want to be extra sure, yes, but we've got more than enough to cover everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us. We only went 35 minutes over, so sorry about that. Thank you everyone for your questions, and we will look forward to seeing you here starting in just a couple months. Have a great evening.
Good night.
Night.